Hello everyone, I am Onebird. Today's video, we're sticking to the level 2 traders theme, but this time we're looking at SMGs. We're going close quarters. I'm going to give you too many SMG builds to even count, and I'm going to give you my recommendations for the best SMG builds at level 20, level 2 traders. For this video, we're going to start with the builds that cost the least, and then we're going to build up to the most expensive, because I want you to see what you can get so that when you're spending extra money, you can make that decision, is it worth it? So to start off with, I've got the PPSH 41. I talked about this in the level 1 traders guide, but at level 2, it's still a great budget option. 26,000 rubles from Prapor. It's the lowest build I'm going to show you in terms of ergonomics. And it's probably the highest recoil I'm going to show you, but 51 recoil is not bad at all. There's no real changes to the build. If you hate using iron sights, then this build just isn't for you. So now let's move on to the level 2 option. This is the PP91 Kedr-B, silenced. And that's the main benefit, in my opinion, for going for the Kedr-B over the PPSH. 36,000 rubles from Prapor level 2, but you can pick this thing up on the flea market fairly reliably for 25 to 30,000 rubles. A fantastic budget option. You are going to have to use the iron sights. There is no tactical device, but it is silenced. Next up, we've got the PP19 Vityaz. Hopefully I've pronounced that right. This is available from Prapor, 21,500 rubles. I've actually got 2 builds to show you for the PP19. We've got a bare bones budget build, and then we've got an upgraded top of the line level 2 trader PP19 build. Let's look at the bare bones budget build first. So we had the PP19 Vityaz sound suppressor. We don't change the handguard at all. We don't change the receiver, but we do add on to the mount on the side, the Axion Cobra EXP reflex sight via the dovetail mount. And I'm going to add to the shade to the front of that Cobra for the extra ergonomics. I'm also going to add in the charging handle, the new charging handle at level 2 for the extra ergonomics. And we're going to add the AK GP25 recoil pad. That brings us to the vertical recoil 44, ergonomics 43 build. Cost of the gun is about 21,500 rubles. Cost of the attachments, we're looking at 35,000 rubles. Total cost, 56,500 rubles. Right, now I'm going to bring out my balls to the wall, most expensive PP19 top of the range level 2 SMG build. I've picked it up, but I think at level 2, this is actually a really good weapon. The problem is the price. It gets really high, and then you look at some of the other SMGs you can get, and you're kind of like, well, I'll probably go for those instead of spending cash on this. This version right here is going to cost you around about 102,000 rubles. So we're pushing above that 100,000 ruble mark. And yeah, that's a lot to spend on a PP19 when the original gun only costs 21,500 rubles. You see the dilemma here? So the changes we're making, first of all, we're changing the pistol grip. The AK Tapco saw, that's going to give us extra ergonomics. We're then changing the receiver from the standard receiver to the Vityaz-SN receiver. You're going to have to remove the previous dovetail mount sight, and then you're going to have to reattach the Axion Cobra sight on top of the dust receiver and add the shade on the front. We're then going to add the CAA RS47 handguard, available from Peacekeeper level 2. We're going to add the Zenit RK-4 foregrip to the handguard, and then we're going to add the Surefire X400 flashlight to the side. So there are some pretty expensive parts there. So what do you gain for the extra expense? Well, the build cost goes from 56k to 102k. You're going to gain 4 recoil. Not that much really. You are going to jump from 43 ergonomics to 55 ergonomics. That's an extra 12 ergonomics, so you do get a decent ergonomics jump there. One thing you can do is upgrade in stages. So you can buy the bare bones budget build for 56k, run it, you survive a raid, basically spend the same amount again and upgrade to the most expensive version. And that way you can get to the top end in stages. That's my problem when you get to the top end PP19 build. You are spending quite a lot and you've got some other good builds to go up against. So overall, my advice is the PP19 is a great weapon. I would stick with the budget build option. And I would kind of call it like a mid-level build. So you've got the PPSH or the Kedr-B as your total budget options. Then you've got a mid-level build with the PP19 at 56.5k. And then we're going to go on to look at some other SMGs that are going to touch that 100k mark, but I think are a little bit better than the PP19. Still, PP19 is a great weapon. And I have dropped some big chads with that gun, so do not underestimate it. Next up, we've got the HK UMP MP5 ACP SMG. I'm not really going to recommend that you use this SMG, but I know people are going to ask about it, so that's why I included it in the video, because you're going to ask why it's not in the video. My personal opinion, level 2 traders, level 20, I think it's better to go with other options, either the PP19 or the SMG that we're going to talk about after the UMP. The reason, the ammunition. Now, most people are going to tell you the ammunition's fantastic for the UMP, which it is. I don't have any problems with that. But at level 20, at level 2 traders, you're going to struggle to get the best ammunition. And personally, the actual build themselves aren't amazing. The ammunition makes them shine. You're just going to struggle to get the ammo. The UMP itself, you can buy from Peacekeeper level 2, 34,544 rubles. It actually costs more on the flea market. I guess that shows the strength of the weapon when you do have that great ammunition in it. But there is also a barter available that you might be able to take advantage of. I'm going to talk about the barters after I've looked at the UMP builds. So the attachments for this one, we get the stock UMP, we put on the Axion Cobra sight straight onto the mount, and the Cobra sight shade as well. We've got the Zenit RK-4 foregrip that goes straight onto the rails, and we've got the X400 flashlight. That's it. I wanted to keep the attachments to a minimum to give you kind of a mid-level basic UMP build. Total, you're looking at a 70k build price. 51 recoil, 59 ergonomics. The ergonomics is great, one of the highest that we're going to see. The recoil, actually, remember that PPSH? Same recoil as the PPSH. PPSH costs 26.5 grand. You see, if you don't have that great ammunition, is it really worth paying about 50k more for the UMP over the PPSH? That's the kind of question you've got to ask yourself, and that's why personally at this level I don't really recommend this build, but it's good to show you anyway. If you want to upgrade the UMP, this is the build for you. Very simple change. All you do is add on the UMP OEM .45 ACP sound suppressor. Bob's your uncle. Job done. Unfortunately, expensive part. Total cost 115,000 rubles. What do you get? 42 recoil, which is less than the top end PP19 build. 43 ergo, hits the ergo quite hard, which is also less than the top PP19 build. If you don't have the best ammunition to run the UMP, I think it's better to go for the PP19 and upgrade it, or to go for the SMG that we're going to talk about next. Before we do that, I'm going to talk about the barters, because you can save some cash here with the barters for the UMP. If you go over to Peacekeeper and you look up his barters, you've got the UMP 45 here, and you can get that for 7 black knives. What you can do is store up the knives that you loot off scavs in Tarkov, keep them in your stash, your hideout, can wait until you get 7 of them, trade them in for the UMP here using the barter, and that way you can discount the cost of the SMG. The next SMG I'm going to show you is the MP5, and similar to the UMP, we've got a barter here for 8 wooden knives. Now, one more knife, but these wooden knives go for much cheaper, so you can generally find these on the flea market. But remember, if you can save some of these wooden knives up, you're paying a lot less for that MP5. First up, we've got my cheaper build for the MP5. I wouldn't say it's a budget build, it's probably a mid-level build. We're using the HK MP5 MFI HK Universal Low Profile Scope Mount. And then you can add on the Axion Cobra EXP Reflex Sight and the shade on there as well. And then on the front of the weapon, we're actually going to change to the HK MP5 3-lug threaded muzzle protector. And that allows us to add on various silencers, but we're going to go for the Rotor 43 9x19 muzzle brake compensator. I think it looks amazing. I love the big chunkiness of it. Cost of the rifle, if you don't take the barter and purchase it directly, we're looking at 37,250. You can sometimes get them on the flea market for about 30k, so look out for that. Cost of the attachments, 43,000. So we're looking around about 73,000 total cost of the gun, 43 recoil, 50 ergonomics. So we're now going to move on to the second most expensive build I'm going to show you, but I think it's the pinnacle of level 2 SMG builds. I've got one more build after it. This build I'm going to show you right now is the MP5, so let's stick with it. Here it is. It might look familiar. Remember that gunsmith task? It's basically that build. So the differences to the previous build. So the upper receiver changes from the standard MP5 to the MP5 SD upper receiver. You then have to put the standard stock back on. I usually put the drum rear sight on. You don't have to do that, but you're going to get that in the purchased build anyway. We then add on the HK MP5 MFI HK universal low profile scope mount, same as last time, the Axion Cobra reflex sight, and the Axion Cobra sight shade. We then add on the HK MP5 SD polymer handguard, and finally the MP5 SD suppressor. We also add on the HK MP5 SD B&T tri-rail ring mount, which allows us to put that flashlight on. And that brings us to our final build. The total cost of this build, 112,000 rubles. Cost of the attachments, 82,000. Basically the same cost as the attachments for the UMP 45 build. But the big difference here, the recoil. This thing is 32 vertical recoil compared to the top UMP build of 42 recoil. You're grabbing 10 extra recoil. The ergonomics, 59 ergonomics compared to the top level UMP build, 43 ergonomics. You're gaining 16 ergonomics. That's hella crazy as far as I'm concerned. This for me is the pinnacle of SMGs at level 2. My opinion, give it a go. And it friggin' looks cool. I did say we were going to look at one final build. We're going to look at the SIG MPX. The MPX, I personally wouldn't recommend you use it because I think I'd rather you use that MP5 before the MPX. But I'm showing it you because you can get a fairly effective MPX build if you're willing to pay for it. The SMG itself, buy from Peacekeeper, 48,375. You can find them on the flea market around about 45,000, so you're not really getting it that much cheaper. And you're going to double that. You basically add in 48,000 rubles onto the cost of the build, so in total 93,000. We're not adding many parts here. We're adding the same scope as always, the Axion Cobra reflex sight with the shade sight on the front of that. We're adding the Surefire flashlight right onto the side. We're adding the Zenit RK foregrip. And then on the very front of it, we're adding the Rotor 43 9x19 muzzle brake compensator. So that does give you a silenced build, and it does also give you a tactical device. And it's the cheapest build so far that I've shown you that gives you a silencer and a tactical device. But it is still expensive. 93,000 rubles in total. You get 42 vertical recoil. You get 53 ergonomics. So I think if you're going to go for a straight top-end build, you're better off going for the MP5 build. It costs about 20k more, but remember, if you get that barter for it, you can cut that cost back down to basically the same price for better. So that's why I recommend the MP5 build over the MPX build. There you go. I don't know how many builds I've shown you in total. I've lost count. And honestly, I could have shown you even more. But this is my list. These are my recommendations. And I think I've given you the best of the bunch. Just before we talk about my final recommendations, I did some testing because when I was out there in Tarkov using some of these budget weapons, especially the Kedr-B, I found I was running into quite a few weapon malfunctions. It's to do with overheating and the suppressors. I did a little bit of testing, and basically, if you're in a firefight and you're full auto through those SMG mags, for the Kedr-B and the PP19, the fourth magazine, I was hitting a weapon malfunction. So if you're going to use those options, make sure you have your keybind setup to deal with weapon malfunctions. But if you're really struggling, think about going unsuppressed. Once you progress past the PP19, I tested the MP5 and I found I was getting through at least 5 mags. So I don't think it's as much of an issue with the more expensive builds. The cooling's probably better on them as well. But I definitely ran into troubles with the Kedr-B and with the PP19. So, as a bit of a summary, if you want the absolute budget basement of builds, you can go for the PPS41, you can go for the Kedr-B. Both of them from Prapor, both of them basically 25 to 26k. If you want to step up a little bit, go for the PP19 in my opinion. If you're looking for the top SMG, I'm going to recommend that HK MP5 SD version SMG. I think it's underrated in my opinion, but it is costly. Use the barters. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Hopefully you got some useful advice. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. I think with these SMGs, there's loads of different ways you could do things. So these are my recommendations, but you can experiment with them. You don't have to pick the same site. You can find flashlights out there. In Tarkov, you can find foregrips. You can find sights and you can stick them on and you can definitely bring down the cost. I'm giving you these builds as like fresh builds right out the box. You can just buy it right here, right now, all in one. That's going to be the cost of it. Let me know your thoughts. I'm always interested and always ready to improve my own builds. Hit me down below in the comments, hit like button, hit subscribe. Let me know what you want for future videos.